Doesn't it feel so good when you make a long to-do list and then you can just cross things off? Well, what if we stopped adding tasks altogether and then started subtracting them? The new book, Subtract, The Untapped Science of Less, explores the other approach to problem solving. I spoke with the author, Leidy Klotz.
My son was 3 at the time, and we're building a Lego bridge out of his Duplo blocks. And the problem we had was that the bridge wasn't level. So one of the columns was shorter than the other column. And I turned around behind me to grab a block to add to the shorter column. And by the time I had turned back around, my son had removed a block from the longer column. And I'm a designer by training, and I think a lot about design. I'd always been interested in kind of minimalist, less is more type designs, but I never really honed in on this action of taking away until playing Legos with my son. And so kind of the story of the book starts there, if anywhere.
I like this. So the idea is subtracting to solve problems, right?
Yeah, and that's the key insight that my son showed me, was that subtracting as a way to make things better. And that's the thing that our research has found humans systematically overlooked. I mean, so, we have this great Lego example from my son, but since then we have tens of thousands of hours of research with Legos, with travel itineraries, with grids on a computer screen, showing that people do the same thing that I did in that moment, which is when we're thinking about, okay, how do I want to solve this problem? How do I want to make this thing better? Our first instinct is to think about what we can add.
That's such a good point. So can you kind of give us some tips on finding that subtraction mindset and maybe some real world application?
Giving yourself reminders is really important. It's not that we can't subtract. It's that what happened to me in that moment is what tends to happen to us, is that our first instinct is to add, and then we often add and move on. And whether it's a Lego bridge or whether it's, you're setting up your to-do list for the week, or scheduling your calendar, or setting up your vacation, you add things to it, and then you don't think about subtracting as an option and move on. So if you can put reminders in place at the time when you're actually making these decisions, that can be really helpful. What the pandemic has done in a tragic, devastating way has given us all a reminder of a way to change, right? And how things can be different. And so obviously a lot of these things we're going to want to have come back as soon as they can possibly come back. I've just spent 3 weeks visiting with all the family members we haven't seen for the last year and a half. But it's also shown us things that forced us to take away things that we've realized we've liked. And for me, that's, work travel. I used to spend basically 20 days a year on the road meeting with professional colleagues. And I was more effective this last year doing that over Zoom. And so that's something that, again, this is depends on the person. But for me, that was something that my eyes were open to subtracting as an option there. Yeah. What about you? Have you subtracted anything?
I have been less anxious about not responding to emails because, hey, I think we forget we're one person. And no matter what our bosses and everyone else would like us to do, you just can't get it all done, not humanly possible. So I've given myself leeway on that, I guess. I'm going to subtract the guilt. How about that, Leidy?
That's perfect. Yeah. And it is the guilt, though. That's the thing. I mean, we have there's a little bit of guilt to it that you're not doing all this stuff. And there's a little bit of, desire to display competence, right? I mean, that's part of it is there is something functional that actually needs to get done. But another part of it is you want your boss to see that you're doing something, right? And if they, the email is an immediate way to show that, hey, Amity is doing something. Whereas your real job is actually to create great television content, right? And the email is distracting you from that. So I think that's an example of how, by knowing the science of why it's hard to subtract, number one, the guilt that you mentioned, number two, this desire to display competence, then we can say, okay, well, that's the issue here. How do I still show competence by taking away, right? And so it gets us a little bit closer to how we might actually solve the problem.
I absolutely love that.